Not another reviewer.
Yes, another reviewer. The holiday season is upon us, and as such, I decided to review a Tim Burton film that has the spirit of the holidays all over it. A film that ties together Halloween and Christmas almost seamlessly. A film that spawned more merchandise than children at the time could get their parents to buy. There's only one film I could possibly be talking about, and that would be the early 90s release, Batman Returns. The cast of this film partly carries over from its predecessor, Batman, released in 1989, including Michael Keaton, Michael Gough, and Pat Hingle. Michael Keaton plays Bruce Wayne as Batman. My reference to this in my previous review for White Noise was purely coincidental, though I do realize I do this a lot. He plays an incredibly rich and powerful businessman by night, and a crime-fighting vigilante armed with high-tech gadgets by night. There is no daytime in Gotham City, as Tim Burton sees it. Michael Gough plays Alfred Pennyworth, Bruce's reliable and somewhat motherly butler, who takes on the role of his caretaker as well. Pat Hingle reprises his role as Commissioner Gordon, whose role continues to be reduced to giving Batman information and not being convinced by the Penguin's attempts to defame him. The new additions to the cast for this film are Danny DeVito, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Christopher Walken. Danny DeVito plays the Penguin, a sewer-dwelling mutant man who uses his life as an orphan as a way to set a more devious plot into motion. Michelle Pfeiffer plays Selina Kyle, a quiet, introverted assistant to Christopher Walken's character. After a string of tragic events, she becomes the Catwoman, an almost literal human cat which causes her to become much more extroverted, but her driving force is revenge. Finally, and most notably, the film stars Christopher Walken as Max Schreck, an evil industrialist that utilizes manipulation, murder, and mobster tactics to hold control over Gotham City. Did I mention he was evil? Well, I need to make sure you understand that this guy is pretty much the personification of the worst type of business criminal that the world has to offer. This movie doesn't miss an opportunity to let us know this fact, and he serves as the main antagonist despite being created specifically for this film. The plot of this film follows the Penguin, being born to well-to-do parents that abandoned him after viewing him as nothing but a monster, so he was raised by penguins in the sewer. During the time period this movie takes place, he's an adult and is ready to venture into the outside world, emerging to kidnap Max Schreck after sending a psychotic circus gang to attack Max's Christmas tree lighting ceremony to create a diversion. Batman shows up in the Batmobile, and though he doesn't really leave it, he manages to ward off the circus gang. Selina Kyle, Max's forgetful assistant, gets there to deliver Max's speech, but gets held taser point by a clown. Batman saves her, but she decides to keep the taser. After capturing him, the Penguin blackmails Schreck into allowing him to come out of the sewers under the guise of an orphan in search of his parents and his humanity. Max agrees, and the Penguin lets him go. Max finds Selina at the office late that night after she discovers that the power plant he wants to build will actually store power rather than distribute it. After sharing her findings with Max, he attempts to kill her by throwing her out the window of the building. She's then swarmed by cats that drink her blood before she returns home and flips out, triggered by a perfume ad on her answering machine made by Shrek's company, causing her to destroy her possessions and apartment, and making the Catwoman suit out of a jacket and needles from a sewing kit, because one ugly jacket is going to have enough material to make a kind of ugly Catwoman suit. Max and the Penguin stage a kidnapping of the mayor's baby, where the Penguin immediately saves it and becomes a hero to Gotham City. Bruce sees the event on TV and becomes suspicious. The Penguin then goes to visit his parents' graves and reveals his name, Oswald Cobblepot. Bruce meets Max to discuss the power plant he wants to build, but Bruce refuses to be involved due to Gotham having too much power produced already, as Selina comes in, claiming to have no memory of the night before when her attempted murder occurred. After deciding he wants the Penguin to become mayor, Max has the Penguin send the Red Triangle Circus Gang to cause chaos around Gotham to make the current mayor look bad. Batman appears, losing his Batarang in the process, and finds the Penguin, who manages to escape on an umbrella copter, but not before Catwoman appears to join the conversation. Batman continues the fight with Catwoman, where she stabs him with one of her needle fingernails, because it hasn't been indicated that this suit is bulletproof in the last film or anything. And the Penguin announces his intentions to run for mayor before encountering Catwoman in his office, who takes the Penguin's plans to kill Batman and persuades the Penguin to frame him instead. So he calls Batman out on television to be at the second attempt at the tree lighting ceremony that was crashed at the beginning of the film. Batman does not attend until he sees a news story during his date with Selina that his lost Batarang was found in the scene of the kidnapping of the Ice Princess, the woman that was to light the tree. Batman falls into the trap as he goes to the ceremony and secures his car with armor, only for it to be removed by the Penguin's gang, who proceed to rebuild it. Batman finds the Ice Princess, only to have Catwoman take her away. He finds her again on the ledge of the building, where, as he tries to save her, she falls. It appears to the people below that he was the one that pushed her off. She lands on the Christmas tree button and bats swarm from the tree, so the audience believe that obviously Batman did this. Batman uses this as a diversion, turning his cape into a glider to get away. The Penguin, upon finding Catwoman, attempts to seduce her. His advances are rejected, so he decides he doesn't like her anymore and attempts to kill her with the umbrella copter. The Penguin takes his hobby as a slash fiction author very seriously. Batman gets back to the Batmobile and disarms the security on it, only to find that the Penguin is controlling it. The police are already chasing him for allegedly killing the Ice Princess, as his car destroys other vehicles and endangers lives. The Penguin reveals his entire plot to discredit Batman and become mayor of the city. Batman destroys the receiver controlling his car and makes a narrow escape through an alleyway after his car breaks down to the Bat Missile. This car just never seems to quit jumping the shark. Max continues to manipulate the Penguin, pushing him to make a speech, which Bruce hacks and plays back the audio of when the Penguin explained how he managed to defame the mayor and frame Batman. The whole audience turns on him and begins to throw vegetables at him. Back at his lair, he instructs the circus gang to kidnap and kill all the firstborn children of Gotham right from their beds, as the list of children was what he was compiling when he was supposedly trying to find out who his parents are. So, the final plague from the story of Passover? The Penguin eats fish! That's not kosher! While this is taking place, Max throws a party where Bruce and Selina meet and realize who each other are. Saddened by the fact that they don't want to fight, they leave the party as the Penguin shows up to kidnap Max's son Chip to set his firstborn plan into motion, but agrees to take Max instead. He takes him back to his lair at the zoo and puts him in a comedically large birdcage. The circus gang proceeds with a plan as they attempt to kidnap the kids, but Batman saves them and sends a message to the Penguin saying the children couldn't attend. Finally, having enough of Batman's interference, the Penguin sends an army of missile-toting, mind-controlled penguins to destroy Gotham. Batman shows up in his Batboat to have Alfred redirect the penguins. The Red Triangle Circus Gang abandon the Penguin and flee as Batman approaches. The Penguin does the same. In his duck car, which I have to say, there seems to be a lot of horses under the hood of that duck. Batman intercepts him, crashing both vehicles. Batman pulls out the signal jammer as the two have a brief struggle. The Penguin realizes the penguins came back to him, but presses the button on the signal jammer anyway, causing the penguins to begin firing missiles into the zoo, but also releasing bats from the Batboat that cause the Penguin to fall into the toxic waters of his lair. Meanwhile, Max manages to escape the giant birdcage he's in when Catwoman finds him. He begs for his life before Batman comes in to stop Catwoman from killing Max. Batman takes off his mask to reveal Bruce underneath in an attempt to appeal to her, but instead she claws at his face, removes her mask, revealing who she is to Max, before Max shoots Batman, then shoots her 4 times. Apparently, every time he shoots her, it takes 1 life. How in the fuck does that work? He shoots her in non-fatal areas. I mean, unless she waited to bleed out. In order to lose a life, doesn't she have to, die first? Do cats work like Time Lords? She then takes the taser she'd found earlier, attesting she still has 2 lives left, puts it between her and Max's mouth, and kisses him while activating it so they both die standing in electrified water. The Penguin emerges, obviously dying, and reaches for one of his umbrellas. Unfortunately, he grabbed one that wasn't a weapon and collapses. The Penguins carry him back into the water as his final resting place. As Bruce is driven home by Alfred, he insists they stop the car, where Bruce, after believing he sees Catwoman, goes into an alley to find Selina's cat out by herself. Bruce decides to take the cat with him as the bat signal shines in the sky, with the Catwoman looking up at it with a repaired suit and one remaining life. Okay, so let's get this out of the way first. The characters are all wrong. I don't think any iteration of any of these characters were ever like this. The Penguin and Catwoman are so obviously just based off their names and no real coherent backstory. In this movie, we get a crude, perverted monster man that ate primarily fish, wore shit-caked onesies, and lived in sewers. Sewers inhabited by penguins. Apparently, the zoo exhibit he lived in, Arctic World, was connected to the Gotham City sewer system. What? Why? Outside of the likely unlivable conditions of the sewers, being he's not a Ninja Turtle, he's just a mutant, and despite being mutated, he's still a fucking human. Eating only fish would have fucking killed him, especially as a baby. Don't even ask me how the Gotham City Zoo was even a zoo at all. There were no animals aside from the penguins, and the place is fucking horrifying. Did the penguin go out and kill all the animals and leave their rotting carcasses outside? How would that make any sense, since the penguins seem to have some sort of fucked up environmentalist mentality? What the fuck kind of animals did they even have, especially with the giant rib cage? I would hate to see the world in the eyes of Tim Burton, but I think it's too late. I've seen too many of his films. The actual penguin was called the Penguin because he had a beak-like nose and loved birds. He always donned formal wear, a top hat and a monocle, because he came from a high-class family that rejected him, and the use of the umbrella came from his mother forcing him to carry it everywhere as a child because his father died of pneumonia in a downfall. There was nothing like that in this film, yet somehow he had a bunch of umbrellas in the sewer. He portrays himself more as a classy, white-collar criminal, using manipulation and intimidation as well as being a gangster and a smuggler. All the things they made Max Schreck into. The character they manufactured for this film could have been replaced if they actually did the Penguin correctly. Now, let's look at Catwoman, the woman cat in this film that seems to believe she's actually a cat. She eats birds, just happens to know jujitsu, has 9 lives, licks her suit when she bathes herself, makes endless cat puns. It's just fucking dumb and jarring. And her whole origin being linked around Max attempting to murder her, then cats sucking her blood? Really? That's the best the writer could come up with? What the fuck? And the way hearing about perfume being sold at Max's store sets her off, and then the tear she goes into after just doesn't feel right. The sequence always makes me feel incredibly uncomfortable, like it goes into territory that goes outside of just revenge. Like she's lost her own identity. She's innocent, introverted, and sweet, but then this man overpowers her and attempts to kill her, and she becomes this empowered, martial arts using extroverted masked anti-hero, who at first just wants to take down Max, but then decides she wants Batman to pay too. Even her costume had a purpose in the story. If you'll notice when she assembles the suit, it's a patchwork of stitched together pieces from a jacket. And as the story progresses and more men attempt to kill her, her rage intensifies and her suit takes on more and more damage. But at the end of the film, when the Penguin and Max are dead, and she realizes Batman is the man she loves, when we find out she's still alive, her suit has no visible damage at all, as if the suit being damaged symbolized her rage. It's just insane. She's a cat burglar. That's it. Possibly an orphan that had to learn martial arts to fend for herself on the streets and steal to live. There's no vampiric cats or Max Schreck. There is no Max Schreck. Seriously, there was no need for this asshole in this film. Everything would have worked out fine without this guy. I'm not blaming Christopher Walken. I love the guy and I enjoy his performance, but this character was unnecessary. The movie spent so much time driving home that this guy was just dripping with utter evil that it really took the spotlight away from the actual fucking supervillains. This movie could have been all Batman versus Max Schreck. Anyone could have filled the places of Catwoman or the Penguin in this movie. Hell, we rarely got to see Batman. The only reason you couldn't totally replace him was because his name was in the fucking title. I say that because Batman shows up so rarely. 11 minutes in, we get mostly the Batmobile taking care of things with Batman inside. A third of the way through the movie, we finally get to see Bruce Wayne, and he's only there a few times briefly. Then, at 54 minutes, we finally get to see fucking Batman doing Batman things. I know they need to set up the plot for why Batman needs to take action, but Tim Burton's Batman films always feels like he's an afterthought. The real show is the villains, then Batman is the party pooper that shows up to ruin their fun. But even in this one, Max Schreck had a more active role than the villains did. We need to talk about the Batsuit and the Batmobile real quick too while we're at it. The Batsuit in this film perplexes the shit out of me. It was shown to be bulletproof in the last film as well as this one at the end when Max shoots Batman. It also broke one of the Penguin's umbrella blades, but Catwoman managed to tear a sizable chunk out of it with retractable needles she found in a sewing kit. 1. What the fuck kind of sewing kit is that? And 2. Who makes a suit out of bulletproof, possibly indestructible material, but only some of it? Hell, he rips the cowl right off at the end of the movie when he decides to reveal his identity to another piece of trim. It's going to need to be a little thicker than that if it's going to be bulletproof. Also, pay attention to his eyes the next time you see that scene where he rips off the mask. Let me just briefly touch on the Batmobile now. I understand why it would have the shin breakers and the trip lines. I even see why it'd have that pole that comes out of the bottom to turn the thing around that he used to fry the fire eater with the jet engine, despite wasting half a tank of gas doing it. But the Bat Missile? How could he possibly know he would ever be in the situation that would require his car being roughly a third its original width? I know I'm never going to find any answers, just like no one can properly explain the Batmobile's armor, and I probably shouldn't have even mentioned it. Speaking of Batman frying the guy, didn't Batman have a big thing about not killing people? He killed, or at least fatally wounded, 3 people in this film, and it wasn't even by accident. It was totally intentional. Setting the fire eater on fire with his car, putting a bomb in a strong man's pants, and then the whole sequence with knocking the Penguin into toxic waters. You can say these methods were too cartoonish to be taken seriously, and that the fire eater could have lived through his injuries, but that doesn't change the fact that he blew someone the fuck up with a goddamn bomb. Yet all of a sudden, at the end of the movie, right after he sends Penguin to a toxic watery grave, he wants to be sure that Catwoman doesn't kill Max so he can face justice fairly. Consistency, maybe? Come the fuck on. There were some really cool concepts in this film, like the remote-controlled Batarang. It was kind of neat, and the effect was done pretty well, but the idea that he used it to knock out 4 bad guys standing still at just a little over arm's length makes it seem completely unnecessary. It would have made, so much cooler of an effect if they would have been like snipers in several different buildings, and the thing flew in one window, got one of the snipers, flew out another window of that building into the window of the next building, got that guy, and so on and so forth, then got intercepted somehow. But it was just so stupid, and was just there to advance the plot later on. Then we have the bit where the Penguin is controlling the Batmobile with a quarter-horse-like machine. That bit, brilliant. And it was fun, too. It was something the Penguin would have done because it shows his intelligence and his ability to fuck with Batman to meet his ends. I say all this and complain so much about the shit they got wrong and how fucking awful this movie was because of it, but as a kid, I ate this shit up. You're probably saying to yourself, Jesus, they showed this shit to kids? They made this shit for kids! They had it all aimed at children. Action figures, vehicles, Happy Meal toys, collectible cars, play sets, comic book adaptions that weren't from the original comic book, but from this film. The sad part is, this movie is just a byproduct of how well the first movie went, being it was aimed at kids who thought it was cool because it has Batman in it. Automatic success at the time, so Tim Burton decided he'd take Batman and twist him a little more to fit his own style. But fortunately, the powers that be saw that this time he went too far and handed the movie franchise over to someone else who would continue to damage it even further and cause the need for everything that had been done to the Batman movie universe to be erased. Except for the 1966 film adaptation of Batman, of course.